Sharing is caring, Emily. A frase noistet con malice, nor con evident sarcasm. It was whispered con a sickly, almost maternal sincerity, as Jessica buttoned up the cream silk blouse she had taken from my hanger that morning. The silk slid over her tanned, sweaty skin, the same skin that, minutes earlier, had been pressed against the Egyptian linen sheets of the bed where my husband and I had slept for 5 consecutive summers. The air in the second-floor guest bedroom of our Lake Tahoe summer house was stale. It smelled of sex, cheap coconut sunscreen, and that metallic taste of betrayal you feel at the back of your throat before your brain even processes the image. I stood in the doorway, my hand still on the cold brass doorknob. The sound of laughter from the lawn downstairs, my parents, my aunts and uncles, the distant cousins we only saw on the 4th of July, seemed to come from another universe, muffled and distant, as if I were submerged in a dirty fish tank. Mark, my husband of 5 years, the man who promised to care for me in sickness and in health, was sitting on the edge of the mattress. He held his head in his hands, elbows resting on his knees, hunched in a posture of defeat I knew well. He wasn't crying. He was hiding, avoiding my gaze, avoiding the reality of what he had just done. But Jessica was radiant. She ran a hand through her disheveled blonde hair, that sun-kissed blonde shade that cost $500 at the salon in Los Angeles, but which she swore was natural. She looked at me through the antique vanity mirror, applying my red lipstick with a surgeon's precision. "Don't look at me with that judgmental face, Em," she continued, smacking her lips to check the color. Mark was tense. You know how he gets when you start with your spreadsheets and vacation schedules. He needed an energy release. I just helped. That's what family does, right? We help each other in times of need. My stomach tied itself into such a violent knot that I thought I would vomit right there on the Persian rug Mom gave us as a wedding gift. It wasn't just the physical act, it was the twisted logic, the toxic New Age philosophy Jessica used as a shield for her sociopathy. She didn't see Mark as my husband. She saw him as a resource, a toy that was being misused and that she, in her infinite benevolence, decided to fix for a few minutes. "Get out," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, low, controlled. There were no screams. The rage was so immense that it bypassed the stage of hysteria and landed directly in a glacial, murderous calm. "Get out of my room. Get out of my clothes." "It's just a blouse, Emily." Jessica laughed, turning to Mark and stroking his bare shoulder. "Come on, Marky, lift your head. Don't let her heavy energy contaminate you now. What we did was beautiful. It was natural." Mark flinched at her touch. I saw it. He didn't recoil in disgust. He recoiled in fear of me. He knew. He knew that the tax attorney who calculated the family's taxes and organized their retirement funds wasn't the same woman his chaotic sister had manipulated since childhood. Mark knew I kept receipts for everything. "I'm going downstairs," Mark mumbled, his voice hoarse, finally picking up the polo shirt lying on the floor, crumpled like our dignity. "Emily, can we talk later when people are gone?" "Talk?" I looked at him, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in months. I saw the weakness in his jawline, the cowardice in the brown eyes I used to find kind. No, Mark, we're not talking. You're going downstairs, you're going to get a beer, you're going to smile at my dad, and you're going to pretend you're the perfect son-in-law he thinks you are. Because if you open your mouth, or if you make a single misstep in the next 4 hours, I swear to God, the conversation we'll have won't be verbal, it will be legal. Mark swallowed hard. He nodded, too quickly, and almost ran out of the room, bumping into the doorframe. It was just Jessica and me. The silence between us was thick. The ceiling fan spun slowly, cutting through the warm afternoon air. Hush, hush, hush. Jessica smiled, that predatory smile of someone who had just fed and still had blood on her teeth. You're so hard, little sister, so rigid. That's why he sought warmth. Ice burns, you know. Ice preserves, I replied, walking up to her. I stopped inches from her face. I could smell my husband on her skin mixed with her patchouli perfume. And ice is also what you put on a bruise after a beating. Are you threatening me? She raised a perfectly arched eyebrow. What are you going to do? Tell Mom. She'll tell you to forgive, to keep the peace, like always. She was right. That was the Bennett pattern. Jessica broke things, I fixed them, Mom swept it under the rug, and Dad signed the check. It was like that when she was expelled from boarding school for selling Adderall. It was like that when she crashed Dad's car drunk at 19. It was like that when she stole Grandma's identity to open credit cards. Jessica is a free spirit, Mom would say. She feels things more deeply than we do. But today, something had changed. Maybe it was the fact that it was my house, my bed, my husband. Or maybe it was the fact that in the pocket of my linen shorts, I had a flash drive. A small silver device that weighed less than 30 grams, but carried tons of secrets I had been quietly collecting for the past 6 months. Go downstairs, Jessica, I said, opening the door. Go eat a burger. Go charm the aunts and uncles with your stories of spiritual retreats in Bali. Enjoy yourself. It's your last supper. She laughed again, picking up her fringed purse. You're dramatic, Em. Last supper. It's just a 4th of July barbecue. Try to relax. Maybe Mark and I can teach you some breathing techniques later. She left, sashaying down the hallway, convinced of her impunity. She thought I was paralyzed by shame. She thought the rule not airing dirty laundry in public was an immutable physical law in our family. I closed the door, locked it, leans my forehead against the cold wood. I took a deep breath. 1, 2, 3. I not cry. Tears would ruin my makeup, and I needed to be flawless. I walked to the window and looked out at the blue lake, the speedboats passing, the American flags fluttering. It was the perfect setting for a psychological horror film. I looked at the unmade bed. I violently pulled the sheets, tearing them from the mattress, and threw them into the corner of the room. I would never sleep there again. Sharing is caring, I whispered to the empty room. All right, Jessica, you want to share? Let's share. Let's share everything. Walking down the oak wooden stairs of the lake house felt like a descent into hell. If hell were decorated with red, white, and blue garlands and smelled of smoked ribs. With each step, I heard my family's voices growing louder, sharper, each laugh sounding like a personal insult. Downstairs, the Bennett family ecosystem was in full operation. My father, Robert, was in charge of the colossal stainless steel grill, wearing that ridiculous apron that read, "The Grill Father," which Jessica had given him for Christmas 3 years ago, but with Dad's credit card, of course. He flipped burgers with the seriousness of a general in battle, surrounded by aromatic smoke. My mother, Susan, circulated among the guests with pitchers of iced tea and margaritas, her smile fixed and perfect, the consummate hostess who would rather die than leave a glass empty for more than 30 seconds. I saw Mark near the drinks cooler. He was drinking an IPA straight from the bottle, his eyes glazed over, talking to my cousin Mike about American football. Mark was tense. His shoulders were hunched, defensive. Every time someone laughed loudly, he flinched. He was a man awaiting the guillotine, but trying to maintain a casual conversation about quarterbacks. How pathetic. And there she was, Jessica. She had already gone downstairs and perfectly integrated into the scene. She was sitting on the wicker lounge chair, surrounded by my aunts, Clara and Rose. Jessica gestured with a glass of white wine in hand, my favorite Sauvignon Blanc, I noticed, telling some animated story. The aunts listened, fascinated. This was Jessica's superpower. She could set your house on fire and, 5 minutes later, convince you to admire the beauty of the flames. "Oh, there she is!" Mom saw me at the patio door. "Emily, darling, come here. Jessica was just telling us about how she rescued a stray dog in Indonesia. It's such a touching story." I walked over to them. My feet felt like lead. The afternoon sun beat down on my face, relentless. I smiled. The smile hurt the muscles in my cheek. "Rescued a dog?" I asked, stopping beside the lounge chair. "How noble of you, Jess. Considering you forgot to feed my cat when you stayed at my house last year." Jessica didn't miss a beat. She laughed, touching Aunt Clara's arm. "Oh, Emily and her grudges. The cat was fine, Em. He just did some intermittent fasting. It's good for animals. Cleanses toxins." The aunts laughed. They thought it was sisterly banter, that cat and mouse dynamic everyone had normalized. Nobody saw the poison. Nobody saw that the cat's fasting resulted in 3 days of veterinary hospitalization and a $2,000 bill that I quietly paid. "Toxins," I repeated, staring fixedly at her. "It's amazing how well you understand toxins, Jessica. You're practically an expert in poisons." She returned my gaze. There was a challenge there. "Go ahead," her eyes said. "Make a scene. Ruin Dad's party. Be the hysterical villain everyone expects you to be." I didn't bite the bait. Not yet. "I'll get a drink," I said, and walked away. I went to the appetizer table. I picked up a lemonade, the ice clinking against the glass. My hand didn't tremble. That frightened me. I should have been trembling. I should have been crying in the bathroom. But the mental clarity I possessed was absolute. It was the same clarity I felt before a major tax trial, when I knew the other party had committed fraud, and I had the documents to prove it. Mark approached me, cautious like a wounded animal. "Emily," he whispered, looking around to ensure no one was listening. "Please, I don't know what came over me. She came on to me and started talking about how stressed I was and—" "No," I cut him off without looking at him. I continued looking at the lake. "Don't you dare blame her hippie witchcraft for your lack of character, Mark. She opened the door, but you walked in. You took off your pants. You chose." "I love you," he said. The phrase sounded as empty as a bounced check. You love the comfort I provide, I corrected. You love the house I bought, the car I pay for, the vacations I organize. You love the Emily who fixes everything. Well, guess what? I'm going to fix this, too. What are you going to do? The panic in his voice was palpable. I'm going to present the slideshow, Mark, like I do every year. He blanched. The memory show? Emily, no, you didn't put anything in there, did you? Please, your parents. Oh my God, your dad will have a heart attack. If he does, we have 2 doctors in the family present here, I replied coldly, nodding toward Uncle Bob and Cousin Sarah. He'll be in good hands. Better than mine. I moved away from him and went to help my dad at the grill. He seemed happy, genuinely happy. Hey, champ, he said, putting his sweaty arm around my shoulder. Nice party, huh? Your sister is in great form today. I'm so happy when I see you 2 together here. You know, I worry about her. She doesn't have your stability, Emily. She needs us. She needs boundaries, Dad, not us, I mumbled, picking up a plate of burgers. Oh, you know how she is, he shrugged, flipping a sausage. It's just her way. But she has a good heart. Deep down, she just wants to be loved. She said you lent her that pretty blouse. See, you 2 are getting along. The blouse. The dem blouse. Yeah, Dad, I lent it to her. I lend everything to her, don't I? Money, clothes, husbands. What? He didn't hear the last word over the sizzle of fat on the coals. Nothing, Dad. I said we're a very generous family. The afternoon dragged on. I ate the potato salad, which tasted like sawdust in my mouth. I talked to Aunt Rose about her hip surgery. I smiled at Uncle Bob's grandchildren's photos. And all the while, I felt the weight of the flash drive in my pocket as if it were a loaded weapon. I watched Jessica. She was unstoppable. She was flirting with Mark's second cousin. She was filling Mom's glass with wine, ensuring she stayed merry and compliant. Jessica was operating at peak manipulation level, weaving the web that kept everyone trapped in her narrative of the lost but adorable girl. But there were cracks in the armor. I noticed how she checked her phone every couple of minutes, nervously. I noticed how she avoided looking directly at Aunt Clara. There was tension there, an old tension. I knew why. My dossier was complete. The betrayal with Mark was just the icing on the shit cake she had been baking for years. What I had in my pocket wasn't just about adultery. It was about crimes, frauds, and the systematic destruction of every person who dared to say no to her. The sun began to set, painting the sky purple and orange. The porch lights came on. "Showtime!" Dad shouted, clapping his hands. "Come on, everyone, to the lawn! Emily has prepared the annual retrospective." My heart pounded. It was now. I walked over to the table where my laptop was connected to the projector. The makeshift white screen, a sheet stretched across the side wall of the boathouse, fluttered slightly in the evening breeze. Jessica sat in the front row, pulling a beach chair close to Mom. Mark sat in the back, in the shadows, near the trees. Coward to the end. "Let's see what Emily has prepared," Jessica said loudly for everyone to hear. "I hope you put in my Bali photos, the ones where I'm meditating at the temple." "Oh, I put in photos of temples, Jessica," I whispered to myself as I connected the HDMI table. "But not the ones you imagine." I pressed the Enter key. The screen lit up. The Bennett family logo appeared, spinning with soft instrumental music. Everyone applauded. The first photo appeared. Christmas, 1998. Jessica and I opening presents. Innocent. Oh, the audience cooed in unison. The second photo, high school graduation. The third, my parents' wedding. I let them relax. I let nostalgia soften their hearts. I let them believe it would be another night celebrating our perfection. And then, with a soft click on the keyboard, I changed the soundtrack. The gentle music stopped. Absolute silence fell, and the screen went black for 2 seconds. When the image returned, it wasn't a family photo. It was a screenshot of a banking app. The image projected on the white wall of the boathouse was sharp, bright, and devastating. It was a detailed statement from my parents' joint emergencies account, the one they swore they only used for medical issues or urgent house repairs. Mas a linha highlighted in neon red, magnified so even and rosy com her cataracts could see, told a different story. Date: 2 de 14 de 2023. Beneficiário: Beverly Hills Aesthetic Clinic. Amount: R$ 15.000. Descrição: cirúrgica procedimento. A silêncio no lawn não foi imediata. There was a moment of cognitive confusion. Pessoas tentaram fitar aquela imagem no contexto de uma vacação retrospectiva. What is that? Dad asked, squinting, his beer glass stopping halfway to his mouth. Emily, I think you opened the wrong file. That looks like a statement. It's not the wrong file, Dad, I did. Meu voz, amplificada pelos speakers Bluetooth estrategicamente plaçados, catou pelo stuffy noite. We're celebrating memories, right? And investimentos. I think it's importante to celebrate where the family's money is being invested. Aparentemente, Jessica's medical emergency em fevereiro, the ovariana cyst she caiu at Thanksgiving dinner, was actually liposuction and breast implants. Coletivo gaspe surpreendeu a audiência. Everyone looked at Jessica's chest. Emily! Mom stood up, knocking over her paper plate con cake. Turn that off now! That's private! How dare you assess our accounts? How dare you lie to Dad? I retorted, clicando ao próximo slide. Você told him the money went to help pay por cousin Mike's rehab. Mike, did you receive $15.000 em fevereiro? Mike, who estava com beer e looked half drunk already, widened his eyes. What? No, I've been clean for 3 anos, and Susan, I didn't ask for any money. O look de betraição meu pai castou para minha mãe foi visceral. Ele trabalhava 70 horas por semana na construção company. Ele odiava mentiras. Susan? Ele asked, his voz tremendo. It was for her self-esteem, Robert, mãe escremeu déspera. She was depressed. She did it to get modeling jobs. I couldn't tell you porque você é são tengo com esses temas. Jessica stand up. Seu rosto, iluminado pelo cold projetor light, estava contorcida com ódio. A máscara Namastê havia completamente caído. Você é uma invejosa, bitch, Emily escremeu, pontando seu finger em mim. Você não consegue estar que eu seja bonita. Você tenta compensar sendo rica e borrenha, mas você sempre será a ugly sister que precisa comprar afeição. Talvez, eu calmamente acordei, mas ao menos eu não compro afeição com dinheiro roubado de grama. Eu cliquei novamente. A tela mudou. Agora era um scanner legal, um reporte de polícia de 2 anos atrás, de uma polícia estação em Flórida. Natureza, identidade falsa e fraude. Vítima, Margaret Bennett. Avó, suspeita, Jessica Bennett. Grandma havia falecido 6 meses atrás. Ela passou o último ano de sua vida destressada porque a banca ficava ligando, demandando pagamento por dívidas que não lembrava incorrer. Nós pensamos que era demência. Pusemos-la em um nursing home mais barato, porque o dinheiro havia desaparecido. Não! Auntie Clara pôs a mão à sua boca, Teres começando a cair. Mãe craiu dizendo que ela não havia comprado aquelas bolsas. Nós dissemos que ela estava confusa. We medicated her for anxiety. She wasn't confused, I said, feeling a warm tear roll down my face. That part hurt me too. Jessica used Grandma's information to open 3 credit cards. She maxed out $50,000 on trips, clothes, and spas. And when the charges came, she convinced Mom that Grandma was senile. I walked closer to the screen, standing between the projection and my family. You let Grandma die thinking she was crazy, I said, looking directly at my mother, to protect Jessica. Mom collapsed into the chair, sobbing. She didn't deny it. Guilt was etched into every wrinkle on her face. Jessica, realizing the ground was crumbling beneath her, tried to change tactics. She looked at Mark, who was still hiding in the shadows. "Mark!" she screamed. "Do something! She's crazy! Get her out of there!" But Mark didn't move. He was paralyzed by terror. Because he knew what was coming next. He knew the horror show was only halfway through. "Oh, Mark isn't going to help you, Jessica," I said, a sad smile on my lips. "Mark is too busy trying to calculate how much his divorce will cost." "Divorce?" Dad asked, looking away from the crying mother. He looked like a man who had taken a physical beating. "Emily, what's happening? Why divorce?" "Because Jessica really believes in sharing, Dad," I said, clicking to the next slide. "She believes that sharing is caring." The screen flickered, and then the video started playing. It wasn't the bedroom video. I spared them the pornography. It was the hallway video, recorded by the security camera I installed last week. The black and white image showed the second-floor hallway at 2:30 p.m. that afternoon. We saw Mark coming out of the bathroom. We saw Jessica coming out of the guest bedroom wearing only a towel. We saw her press him against the wall. We saw her hand go down his shorts. We saw him not resist, not at all. We saw him kiss her with a hunger he hadn't had for me in years. And we heard the audio. The camera's microphone was excellent. "She's so boring, Mark," Jessica's voice echoed across the lawn, ghostly and cruel. "You deserve some fun. Come on, quick, while she's organizing her stupid spreadsheets." "But what if she comes up?" Mark's voice asked. "She won't. She's predictable. And even if she does come up, she'll never do anything. She needs us to look perfect." The video ended. The screen went black. The only sound was the cicadas and my mother's muffled sobs. Dad slowly turned to Mark, the grill father, the man who treated Mark like a son, the man who took Mark fishing, who gave him his grandfather's watch. "You—" Dad didn't yell. His tone was low, guttural, dangerous. "You touched my daughter in my house while I was grilling for you?" Mark stood up, his hands trembling. "Robert, I can't explain. It was a moment of weakness. She seduced me." "Shut up," Dad roared, taking a step forward. But Jessica wasn't finished. Even cornered, even exposed as a thief and an adulterer, she had one last card up her sleeve. A card of pure malice. "Stop judging me!" she screamed, clambering onto a chair to stand taller. "You're all hypocrites. Dad, you think Emily is the little saint? Guess what? Perfect Emily knew about Grandma's debts 3 months ago. She found out and didn't say anything. She saved it to use today. She let Grandma die without clearing her name just to have ammunition against me. The lie was so audacious, it took my breath away. That's a lie, I said, but my voice wavered. I had found out after Grandma's death, during the inventory. But I saw the doubt in my father's eyes. Jessica knew how to plant seeds of doubt better than anyone. "She's cold, Dad," Jessica continued, gaining momentum. "She planned this humiliation. Who does that? Who records their own family? Who projects their sister's mistakes onto a big screen? Only a psychopath. I slept with her husband because he was unhappy, because she emotionally castrated him. I did him a favor." She was turning the tables. Incredibly, she was trying to transform my revenge into proof of my own villainy. And the worst part, Mark was shaking his head, agreeing. "She's controlling Robert," Mark said, seeing a lifeline. I felt suffocated. Jessica listened to me. She understood me. I looked at them, the pair of traitors united by survival. I looked at my mother, destroyed by shame. I looked at my father, torn between the anger of betrayal and the horror of public exposure. I realized at that moment that facts weren't enough. They needed more than financial or sexual truth. They needed to see Jessica's rotten soul. And I had one last bomb, the nuclear bomb. I hesitated to drop because it would hurt an innocent person sitting right there, eating pie. I looked at Aunt Clara. She was quiet, shocked, holding her daughter's hand, my cousin Sarah. Sarah, whose engagement had been broken off 2 years ago without explanation. "You say I'm cold, Jessica?" I said, returning to the laptop microphone. "You say I keep secrets? So let's talk about the last secret. Let's talk about Chicago. And let's talk about David." Upon hearing the name David, Jessica stopped screaming. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like a special effect. "No," she whispered. "You don't know that." "I know everything," I replied. "And now the family will know too." "I know everything," I repeated, my voice echoing in the suffocating quiet of the yard, competing only with the projector's static hum. The name David hung in the air like a toxic cloud. David Miller. The tall, kind man with a boyish smile who should have married my cousin Sarah 2 years ago. The man who disappeared from her life 3 months before the wedding, claiming he wasn't ready, leaving Sarah shattered, questioning her own worth, spending fortunes on therapy to understand what was wrong with her. Sarah, who was now sitting in the 3rd row, holding her mother, Aunt Clara's hand, looked at me. Her eyes, previously full of confusion, were now dark with fear. She knew the answer to her 2-year-old trauma was on that flash drive. Jessica tried to lunge toward the computer table. "Don't you dare!" she screamed, her eyes wide with real panic, not the performative panic from before. "Turn it off! Mom, make her stop!" But Mom couldn't move. She was slumped in the wicker chair, her skin gray, one hand covering her mouth as if physically trying to prevent the truth from escaping. Dad, Robert, intercepted Jessica. He held her arm. Not with violence, but with a steel-like firmness I'd never seen him use with his little princess. "Let her show it, Jessica," he said, his voice low and terrible. "If it's a lie, there's nothing to fear." Jessica struggled, but Dad didn't let go. He looked at me and nodded once. "Go ahead." I clicked. The white screen on the boathouse wall changed. The projected image wasn't a grainy photo or a security video. It was a crisp, scanned PDF document, a medical record from a luxury private clinic in Chicago. The date was 2.5 years ago. Patient, Jessica Bennett. Procedure, termination of pregnancy, 10 weeks. Responsible escort, Susan Bennett. Payment, bank transfer, joint account, R&S Bennett. The silence was broken by the sound of shattering glass. Aunt Clara dropped her iced tea glass on the stone patio. The sound was sharp, definitive. But I didn't stop there. The next image was the coup de grace. It was an email recovered from Mom's old account, which I managed because she didn't understand technology. From Susan Bennett. To David Miller. Subject, final agreement. David, the transfer has been made. Jessica took care of the problem. As we agreed, you will break off the engagement with Sarah and move to the East Coast. No one needs to know the baby was yours. It would be devastating for the family if they found out you slept with your fiancé's cousin. Take the money and disappear. It's for the best for everyone. The whimper that escaped Sarah's throat was the most painful sound I had ever heard. It wasn't a scream. It was the sound of an animal being disemboweled alive. She stood up, staggering, looking from the screen to Jessica, and then to her own aunt, my mother. "You," Sarah pointed at Jessica, her hand trembling so violently it looked like she was having a seizure. "You hugged me when he left. You told me he didn't deserve me. You traveled with me to Napa to heal my heart." Jessica, seeing there was no more denying it, adopted the stance of a cornered animal deciding to bite. She pulled her arm free from Dad with a sharp tug and raised her chin, defiant. Sociopathy gleamed in her eyes, cold and hard as diamond. "He was bored, Sarah," Jessica spat the words. "David was suffocated by all your sweetness. He wanted fire. He came after me at the Christmas party. I just reciprocated. And when I got pregnant, I did what had to be done. I saved you from a bland marriage to a traitor. I did you a favor." Aunt Clara lunged forward. The quiet woman who baked apple pies and knitted socks in winter crossed the lawn with the fury of a lioness. "Who slept cracked in the night, loud and dry." Jessica's face turned sideways from the force of the impact. "Never again," Clara hissed. "Speak my daughter's name." The real destruction was happening elsewhere. It was happening on my father's face. Robert Bennett, the man who built his life on the pillars of honor, hard work, and family, was looking at his wife of 35 years as if she were a stranger. He read the email projected on the wall. He read his wife's name as the sender. He read about the bribe. He read about the cover-up. "Susan," he said. His voice broke. It was the first time in my life I'd heard my father sound weak. "You paid, with our retirement money, for our niece's fiancé to disappear after getting our daughter pregnant?" Mom was crying hysterically now, clutching the pearls around her neck. "I wanted to protect the family, Robert. Imagine the scandal, Robert." Sarah would be destroyed. Jessica would be an outcast. I cleaned up the mess. It's what mothers do. You didn't clean up the mess, I said, turning off the projector. The screen light vanished, plunging the yard back into semi-darkness, illuminated only by the tiki torches and the distant porch light. You swept the garbage under the rug until the house rotted from the inside. And guess what? The smell finally leaked out. Mark, who had been watching everything with his mouth agape, tried to approach me again. He saw the boat sinking and, like the rat he was, tried to jump back onto the dry deck. "Emily," he whispered, trying to take my hand. "My God, I didn't know. Her family is sick. Jessica is sick. I was manipulated, love. Let's get out of here. Let's go to our house. I promise I'll make it up to you. We can go to therapy." I looked at his hand, the hand that wore my wedding ring until this afternoon, the hand that touched Jessica, the hand that now looked like a claw, trying to pull me back into the abyss. "Take your hand off me," I said. There was no anger, just a deep, clinical disgust. "Do you think this changes what you did? Do you think knowing Jessica is a sociopath exempts you from having unzipped your pants? You're worse than her, Mark. She's sick. You're just weak. And I'm not a rehabilitation center for men without a backbone." "But I'm your husband," he whimpered, desperation taking over. "No," I replied, picking up my purse from the ground. "You're Emily's ex-husband. The papers will arrive on Monday, and I suggest you hire a good lawyer, because I'm excellent at my profession, and I'll take every last branded polo shirt you bought with my bonus." I walked toward my car. The lawn was a mess. Sarah was crying in Clara's arms. Mom was pleading at Dad's feet, who stood motionless, looking at the dark lake. A man who had just realized his entire life was a lie, financed by his own blindness. Jessica stood alone, a hand on her cheek where she had been slapped. No one was near her, not Mark, not Mom. She looked at me as I passed. "You're going to die alone, Emily," she screamed, her voice failing. "Nobody likes the person who turns on the lights at the party." I stopped and turned one last time. The lake breeze ruffled my hair. I felt strangely beautiful. "Perhaps," I replied, "but I'd rather die alone in the light than live accompanied in the dark with you all." I got into the car, started the engine. As I backed out of the gravel driveway, the town's first official fireworks exploded in the sky over the lake, a large golden chrysanthemum that illuminated the scene in the rearview mirror. My family shattered on the perfect lawn, like broken dolls scattered by a spoiled child. The roar of the firework muffled their screams. I accelerated. I didn't look back. The dark road ahead had never looked so inviting. The resolution, however, was not an overnight event. Real life doesn't end with credits rolling as the protagonist drives into the sunset. Real life has hangovers, lawyers, and empty days. The divorce was brutal. Mark tried everything. Flowers, letters, suicide threats, threats to take the house. He oscillated between pathetic regret and misogynistic rage. But I had the video. I had the evidence. In the end, he signed the agreement. He kept the car I already hated and his student debts. I kept the house, the investments, and my name. Jessica tried to sue me for defamation and unauthorized disclosure of private material. It was the joke of the year at the law firm. The evidence of fraud against Grandma was so compelling that my lawyer suggested that if she proceeded, she'd walk from civil court straight to criminal court in handcuffs. She withdrew the lawsuit. My parents, that was the hardest part. Dad didn't divorce immediately. He was an old-fashioned man for whom divorce was a personal failure. They tried living in the same house for 6 months, a silent purgatory. He slept in the guest room, she in the master bedroom. But money never lies. When a full audit of the accounts revealed that Mom had siphoned off almost $300,000 over the years to cover Jessica's mistakes, something broke inside him that religious faith couldn't fix. He moved into a small apartment near the office. He visits me on Tuesdays. We eat Thai food and don't talk about them. He looks 10 years older, but his shoulders are lighter. He stopped wearing the grill father apron. He said he has no one left to grill for. And Jessica? The golden child discovered that gold flakes, without Mom's secret funding and Dad's credit access, her spiritual influencer lifestyle collapsed. I heard she's living with a guru in Sedona, selling crystals online. Sarah told me she saw her profile on a social network looking too thin, preaching about forgiveness and karmic renewal. Sarah was the one who surprised me. 2 weeks after the 4th of July, she showed up at my door. I expected anger. After all, I had exposed her humiliation to everyone. But she brought a bottle of wine and 2 pizza boxes. "You knew it would hurt like hell, didn't you?" she asked, sitting on my couch. "I did," I admitted, pouring the wine. "I'm sorry, I used your pain as ammunition. It was selfish." "It was," she agreed, chewing a slice of pepperoni. "But it was necessary. I spent 2 years thinking Elle was the problem, that I wasn't pretty enough, interesting enough, knowing it was Jessica, that it was a sordid setup. It hurts, but it frees me. It wasn't my fault, Emily. I didn't fail. I was sabotaged." We toasted to sabotage and to freedom. Today, a year later, I'm sitting on my porch. It's the 4th of July again. I didn't go to the lake. I sold my share of the summer house. The silence here is different. It's not the tense silence of kept secrets. It's the silence of peace. I look at my reflection in the wine glass. The dark circles under my eyes are gone. The constant knot in my stomach has disappeared. Do I miss having a big family on holidays? Sometimes. I miss the illusion of belonging. But then I remembered Jessica's phrase, "Sharing is caring." She was wrong about everything, except one thing, ironically. I finally learned to divide. I separated the wheat from the chaff. I separated those who love me from those who use me. I separated the past from the future. And by making that division, for the first time in my life, I am truly taking care of myself. Solitude, I discovered, isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of lies. And viewed from that perspective, my house has never felt so full. And you? What would you do if you found out that the person sleeping next to you and the person who shares your blood conspired against your sanity? Would you keep the peace to save appearances? Or would you set fire to everything to save your soul? If this story of betrayal and justice touched you, subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that they're not crazy. They're just surrounded by good actors. Leave in the comments, would you have forgiven the mother? Remember, blood might be thicker than water, but poison is also a liquid. Choose what you drink wisely. You are stronger than you think.